Welcome back to Off the Cuff. We have an exciting guest today on our show. Ma'am, would you care to introduce yourself to our listening audience?
Absolutely. My name is Caroline Newell, and I serve as the Threat Assessment Team Coordinator for the Virginia Tech Police Department. I serve the entire university community, but I'm a civilian within the police department. So I'm not sworn similar to you all. I don't have a car or a badge, but my entire job is to work on assessing threats to keep our community safe.
Excellent. Thank you. We're going to dive into that more when we get to our destination. Lots of exciting things to talk about there, but in the meantime, I think we'll hit the road here.
No pressure, but we're expecting you to be one of our subpar guests today.
Absolutely.
So if you could live up to that.
Yeah.
All right. So we started this podcast. Was it last year? I think it was. I don't think it's a full year, is it?
Mm.
And we were doing it at Moss Arts in a little room, and then we decided to get out on the road. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to drive around a little bit, and then we are going to park at a scenic location. And normally, if it's nice, we get out, put some chairs outside, and enjoy the outside. But we're actually going to stay inside.
It's a little windy today. It's a little windy. I appreciate you.
So you and I share a common. It's not your hometown, I don't believe,
Right.
but you have lived in the Newport News.
That is right. I do love Newport News. Before Blacksburg, it was actually the longest place I'd ever lived. But prior to Newport News, I was a military kid, so I bounced around a whole lot. Never really stayed in one place long, and so Newport News will always have a very special place in my heart.
So everybody up here is a little bit of kind of Hampton Road 757.
Yeah, a little 757. Yeah.
Hokey.
So what did you when you were getting your undergrad? What did you envision Did you envision yourself as, hey, one day I think I'm going to be a threat assessment coordinator?
Absolutely not. That wasn't even on my radar. I was focused as an undergrad student in wanting to potentially go into government work, so possibly FBI. So a little bit of a kind of a callback to what I was going to eventually be doing, or foreshadowing, if you will. That's better. A little foreshadowing to what I would be eventually doing, working with law enforcement. But instead, I found myself getting more involved in college. I was tutoring, I was working with athletes, I was involved with orientation, I was involved with the conduct office, working in the conduct office. And so ultimately, I realized that I really liked working with college students and the campus environment. And so I went and pursued my master's in higher education student affairs.
And when you came to work here at Virginia Tech, you were in student conduct? Was that the first job you had here?
Correct. So I've been at Virginia Tech for almost 10 years now, which is crazy to me. And my first 2 years here at Virginia Tech were I was a member of the student conduct office. So I would meet with students when they had gotten in trouble. And I would talk to them about their decisions, what led them to meeting with me, and how they could make better decisions in the future. So the whole goal was to make a positive out of someone's decision that maybe wasn't the best in that moment. However, moving forward, I started seeing a variety of different cases. My caseload in student conduct was a variety of abusive cases, so abusive behavior being fights, stalking, harassment, some of the behaviors that are covered by our Title IX office, gender-based violence. And then the other end of the spectrum, I also handled adaptive conflict resolution. And what that means is a lot of people joke around about talking circles, passing I have the talking stick. But the goal of that was actually to resolve some lower level incidents that still impacted the larger community. So stealing fries from the dining halls, other kind of mediated conflicts from the residence halls. So I saw quite a range of incidents and behaviors, but I worked with the police quite a bit, particularly in the abusive conduct. And I started to learn more and more about what our threat assessment team did. And I was recruited over when a position opened up to work with the team full time. Now, I will say that one of the things that led me over to the police department was the Faculty Staff Police Academy. I loved attending as a staff member. It was in the summer of, I'm not going to say when because I'm very old. And I had such a great time getting to know our officers, getting to drive a police vehicle, solving a fake crime scene, which I now help with making. And just an overall great experience. So it made it that much easier to transition when the time came to work with the police department.
I also recommend the Super Police Academy, especially the crime scene day,
Absolutely.
because I'm a little bit involved. But
I will say Detective Johnson is fantastic at really breaking down some really heavy material and a lot of complex material when it comes to different physical evidence. So blood spatter, different stippling marks, you name it. There's quite a bit. I don't want to do any spoilers. No spoilers.
But you will learn.
Whether
Yeah.
you want to or not.
Exactly.
So are you the third threat assessment coordinator since, do you know what year it was formed here at Virginia Tech?
Absolutely. So the team was created in 2008, and what happened was after the tragic event of April 16th, some national scholars related to threat assessment came in and provided some feedback to the university. And one of the pieces of feedback was that there was information about the perpetrator siloed in different parts of campus, but not necessarily one central place where all of that information could be viewed, reviewed, and evaluated if there's something to be concerned about. Now, obviously, if we had one team back in 2007, would that have stopped what happened? We don't know. Obviously, hindsight's 2020. However, that was one of the recommendations, and one of the scholars who made that recommendation was actually recruited by Virginia Tech to come start the team as it exists today. Dr. Gene Dysinger, who is an internationally renowned scholar on campus, on threat assessment, particularly on campuses and school environments, he came and led our team starting in 2008. So the state of Virginia actually put into law, they mandated that all colleges starting in, after 2008 had to have a threat assessment team. And not only did they have to have a team, but the state law actually says who we have to have represented on the team. So Dr. Dysinger came, he worked for the police department. I believe he was a deputy chief of police. And he set up how our team functions to this day. So we had the best of the best come and show us how to do it.
And so and we'll jump even more into it when we get back here, but you kind of just coordinate everything overall. You're not necessarily the director of threat assessment or in charge, right?
No, I'm not the chair of the threat assessment team. It's a multidisciplinary team that involves folks from all over our campus, but is chaired by Deputy Chief Tony Haga. He has been on the team since it was created in 2008. And my job is really kind of all coordination of information, intake of phone calls, concerns. I go out and do a lot of presentations so people know what to report, how to report. They feel a little bit more comfortable when they see it's, they can put a face to the phone number they're going to call. Or if they don't feel comfortable calling the police, which certain situations do warrant that. And certain situations are, I think I'm going to give threat assessment a call and put this on their radar. It's not emergent, and I don't think it's necessarily for the police specifically. If for some reason when people call me, if I think they need to call the police, I make sure to do that. And I'll give our officers a heads up so that they have a little background on the situation as well.
So Tartar's found us a nice mountain here to be on.
Now, is this Tartar Mountain?
It should be, but it is actually near the first roundabout on Southgate as you come off 460. I believe this was this is where the cows were, weren't they? The barn and the barn area and the area that was fenced in. Got a lot of people that come up here and park, have lunch, run, and do a plethora of activities.
I will say I am not running. And thank goodness this isn't a running podcast.
we're going to pivot. We like to use the word pivot. I don't know if you
Mm.
use that enough in your daily life,
I will now.
but we are going to pivot to the back and go from there.
Okay. Well, after a little transition, we're back in the back. We've already heard so much about threat assessment. Before we get into meat and potatoes of your awesome work and everything, let's a little more about you. What do you like about Blacksburg? Let's start with that.
Yeah, I love the mountains, and my husband and I really enjoy that. We can go out and go hiking, go for walking on the trails with our dog. I'm a big dog lady. We have one German Shepherd, and just really enjoy the environment of the community here in Southwest Virginia.
Excellent. All right. Well, so you're the threat assessment team coordinator. I guess, if the students are listening, faculty, staff, anybody, and they're like, well, what even is threat assessment? And again, I know we talked about it a little bit, what does it mean to be on the threat assessment team? What does the threat assessment team do? What is that?
Yeah, absolutely. So threat assessment sounds really scary, right? Threat sounds scary. The whole goal of threat assessment is to evaluate if there's someone who's potentially a harm to themselves, to others, or to the community as a whole. And a lot of people mistake that threat assessment is actually punitive, but the whole goal is to get people connected to the right resources, to get them the help that they need to be successful and be a member of our community that's going to continue to thrive.
We're advancing in Northern Virginia. We've always had satellite facilities. Now we're going to have a central one there. And I would imagine that right now, this threat assessment team is going to partner with individuals there.
Correct.
Once a week kind of thing. But eventually, I guess, who knows where the future could hold. Maybe they have their own eventually. What's the difference between a care team? Do we have a care team here?
We do, yeah.
And threat assessment, if we haven't already said that.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So folks might know that we have a care team here at Virginia Tech. It's housed and run by the Dean of Students office. So the Dean of Students office, their team has, or the care team has a lot of the same representatives in their multidisciplinary team as well. I work very closely with the chair of the care team, Dr. Tara Frank. She's amazing. And we work very closely to evaluate which team needs to be reviewing a certain case. And sometimes it's both based on the types of information we can have and pass to one another. But our university threat assessment team, we are multidisciplinary, like I mentioned, and because we review students, employees, indirectly and non-affiliated folks, we have to cover quite a few different areas of people who can bring valuable information to our discussion.
You're very important to our organization because, I'll be honest with you, some of the databases that you go to, I could get trained in and I could have access to, but I think to myself, what's the point? I can just go straight to Caroline and ask her to do most of my work.
Yeah, right.
It just seems easier
Why
for
not?
me.
Yeah.
Michael, how do you feel about that?
Well,
MJ?
I will say that I'll let the listening audience in on this. Caroline and I actually work, on the same hallway and see each other every day at work.
Every
We
day.
have our little morning meeting, work closely together. Not only does she have the database Kung Fu online search and stuff, she has an incredible ability to just toss out a name at her. She's like, yeah, that person was actually at the university 2 years ago. They ran into this issue. Last thing we know about them is this. Does that name sound familiar to you, Caroline? Oh yeah, that name. Yeah, I mean, she's like the database in herself,
What I was always impressed about threat assessment when I came to work here was the fact that, like you said, Tony Haga, our major, he could do the same things.
Yes.
He can still do it from 10 years, 15 years ago, is that we mentor individuals that might be in discussion. They've taken them to coffee before.
Yeah.
They've, talked to them for years
Mm-hmm.
after the fact. And I think that's pretty good. I think that's pretty cool.
Absolutely. One thing that I like to highlight, like I said, it's not a punitive process, and it's also not a if A, then B. Certain schools really focus on rubrics, check, these all count, and so this is what we have to do. And while that works for other teams, we really focus on an individualized approach here. What's going on in this person's life, and how can we approach that? Police knocking on someone's door isn't always the right solution, right? But sometimes it is. Sometimes there's enough safety concern that we really need to, go quickly and have an officer knock on the door. But sometimes one of the plans of action that our team will create will include connecting someone to the therapy dogs or getting someone connected to the Dean of Students office. They have emergency funds through the Dean of Students office. Is there a financial stressor? Or maybe there's something related to a graduation status. How can we connect with someone's advisor or maybe the registrar to see how they're doing in classes, what they need to connect? That's where academic affairs really thrives as well and brings so much to our conversation. So it's definitely individualized, and sometimes it's having coffee with someone once a month. I know there are several folks, like you said, that that Chief Haga, Deputy Chief Haga has met with to help them get through their entire 4 years here. And it's a success story. It's someone who people, were concerned about, creeped out by, thought was weird. And through mentorship and kind of listening and supporting and let's continue to check in, they knew that they had an ally here and a resource to help them be successful.
Now, so you say that threat assessment is not a punitive process. Now, however, this information gets on your team, and then all these offices that are involved, everybody's kind of private info is just spread throughout all these offices, right? And threat assessment info just goes flying.
Not at all. I think that's another misconception is what we're going to do when someone brings us the information, right? I would say that probably 95% of folks that we are reviewing have no idea that they've ever been on our radar. The whole goal is to be behind the scenes, and the threat assessment information is kept private. Threat assessment records are separate from student records. They're separate from police records. We even keep a very separate database and paper files in my office to make sure that there's no mixing up whatsoever. And threat assessment files are exempt from FOIA and FERPA as well. Again, the whole goal is so that people feel comfortable to be able to share when there's a concern and not feel like, oh my gosh, they're going to go out and tell this person, or this person's going to know that I said that they were scary or concerning. We want our community to not have to evaluate a threat by themselves. I want them to bring it to us. We're experts. We're gonna evaluate it and let us take that burden off your mind, right? If there's nothing to be concerned about, then no harm, no foul. It's not going to impact someone's job in the future. The whole goal, again, is to evaluate if there's something that needs to be done in the immediate.
You've given us a plethora of information. Might I use that word?
Sure.
But we need more information.
Please.
So we're about to go to what? What is our next segment?
Rapid fire.
Rapid fire, here we go.
You want to start?
Yeah, so, we just got some questions, get to know you a little bit better, let our audience know all about, the incredible person we have on our show right now. So, to get in there, starting off deep, burrito or burrito bowl?
Burrito bowl.
Okay. All right.
Excruciating heat or high winds?
Well, we're dealing with high winds now, but I think I would take the heat.
The heat, okay.
Heat.
Maybe similar, for a vacation, would you go to the mountains or the beach?
I would go to the mountains.
Okay, here we are.
You're right. Yeah. I guess life is a vacation then.
Are you a big jacked up truck person, or are you a Volkswagen person?
I've been driving the same car since 2008.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to go with the reliable Volkswagen.
Okay.
Okay, if you're going to watch a game, would you put on the football or the basketball game?
Football game.
Okay, football fan.
I am a football fan, and I actually work all the football games here as well. I don't really get a chance to watch the actual games, but it's nice to be there, and hearing Enter Sandman's cool as well.
Who are the hardest workers at Virginia Tech Police? The detective unit, or I would say patrol, and they are hard workers.
They are
I'm not
hard
excluding
workers.
them, but I'm.
Well, my husband works patrol,
So, because sometimes let's say detectives are Rolos.
Oh. I would say it's a tie. Both very hardworking, very hardworking. I am a little biased because my position is housed within the investigations unit, and I work with the detectives every day, and they do amazing work. But so do the Rolos, and I work with you all quite a bit as well. Yeah.
Okay, a nicer one. Pizza or hamburger?
Oh my gosh.
Cheeseburger, I'd say is better than hamburger.
I love both. I'm gonna go with pizza.
Yeah.
All right, last question. Would you prefer to have the faithful, loyal guard Chihuahua, or would you prefer to have the regular old German Shepherd?
Oh, I know. How embarrassing. I gotta go with the German Shepherd.
Yeah.
I grew up with German Shepherds, and we own a German Shepherd right now. She's, my love. So I do love Chihuahuas, but I'm a German Shepherd gal.
Well, we're going to pivot back to the front and get off this hill.
It's windy.
It's pretty windy. And we're going to drive back to the police department and talk a little bit on the way back. Caroline, not Caroline.
Correct.
Caroline. How would an individual, some people that just, I want to give information, but I don't want to get involved, and I don't really want you to know my name.
Right.
What are the ways to report to threat assessment or to get information to threat assessment?
Absolutely. That's a great question. A lot of people don't know, or they're scared to reach out to threat assessment. Or maybe, I know this generation isn't necessarily one to enjoy a phone call. Maybe they like a text better or an app. So there are a couple different ways to reach out to threat assessment. You can call me, and that's my direct line that's on our website. It's 540-231-7194. But you can also send an email. So we have threatassessment@vt.edu. That's a way that someone can reach out and give us information. As well as you can submit an anonymous report with the police department. That would be forwarded to threat assessment if it's appropriate.
Is that police.vt.edu? How do they
Correct.
get to that anonymous?
Yeah, so police.vt.edu, and it should be in the contact us. So there are a variety of different ways. There's also a way to report something to threat assessment through the Hokey Ready app. There's a, submit a tip, and there's a button for threat assessment. So that's a really important way that someone can pass along information. Most of my conversations start with, this may be nothing, but I just want to pass it along. And the same with, this is super weird, and I didn't know who else to call. So we want people to know how to report that information before it's too late. And again, the goal is to get someone help and protect our community. We just want people to be cautious and look out for one another. The whole goal is to have Hokies have each other's backs so that they can get the help that they need.
We greatly appreciate your time coming out with us, riding around with us on campus. You are the senior threat assessment coordinator, right? Even though you're the only one.
Correct.
But maybe you change that on your business card. Senior,
Sure.
Yeah.
My signature, email signature.
The
Yeah.
lead threat assessment coordinator.
Indeed, yes.
So I know you're excited about this next segment coming up. What's the next segment we got coming up?
That's it.
The MJ Legal Corner.
Legal corner.
Yes.
You
So-
got that right.
Yeah. And we were talking to him earlier. He was telling us about his favorite legal code. And I'm like, are we talking about that today? He's like, no, I'm saving that one.
Yeah.
Gotta save it for a good one. A better guess.
The people
Yeah.
are ready. People are ready for the code section.
But see, you get this legal corner once every podcast, once
Yeah.
every joyous drive around. And I get it every day.
That's
I really
true.
enjoy the
That
insight
is true. Yeah.
of Detective Michael Johnson.
All right, I'm going to come over and let you out, and we thank you much.
Thank y'all.
Welcome back, MJ's Legal Corner. We're gonna get some really interesting stuff today.
Are we diving deep into the law?
Diving a little bit deeper. Okay, we got a long
Kiddie
way to
pool.
go.
We're in the
Yeah,
kiddie pool.
Yeah,
Okay.
just wait till we get to the deep end.
All right,
I'll tell
gotcha.
you what. But something that I think is interesting to me, but also the public might want to know a little bit about. Of like, okay, someone gets in trouble. How exactly does it work? How when someone gets arrested, like what actually happens? Not a lot of people know. So let me bring up, let's scratch the surface of that. Virginia Code 19.2-81, arrest without a warrant authorized in certain cases. So I'll go on the record here saying if there's an arrest warrant for anybody in Virginia, any sworn law enforcement officer can arrest that person. Okay, but a lot of times people think of, oh, that guy just got arrested. They don't think of someone with a warrant. They think of the officer just grabbing him and arresting him. So how can that work? So you either have an arrest warrant for someone, or you can arrest without a warrant in certain cases. So 19.281 says sworn law enforcement officers, and it lists out all the different types of kind of law enforcement we have in Virginia, may arrest without a warrant any person who commits any crime in their presence, in the presence of that officer, and any person for whom that officer has reasonable grounds or probable cause to suspect of having committed a felony. So break that down just a little bit here. So I'm out on patrol and anybody does a crime in front of me, I investigate, I have probable cause, which is kind of like enhanced suspicion. We'll go with that. That person just did a crime, broke a sign in front of me, stole something. I can arrest them right there, okay?
Mm-hmm.
If it's any crime. If it's a felony and I do a little investigation, I can arrest that person without a warrant, even if I didn't see it, right? Okay. Except there's a handful of exceptions of crimes that are misdemeanors that you can still arrest in your presence without a warrant. So such officers may also arrest without a warrant for alleged misdemeanor not committed in their presence involving, this is the thing that we have our new officers trained up on. Like, hey, new officer, here's the quiz. What can you arrest on misdemeanor not in your presence? Here's the list. Shoplifting, carrying a weapon on school property. I will say that is considered, elementary K through 12 primary schools, school property there. Assault and battery, brandishing a firearm, destruction of property in certain cases, kind of for commercial property. Okay. And those arrests can be made with a summons. So that can be, some people might consider it kind of like a traffic ticket. You have to swear you're going to come to court. And it is important. It's still like a real arrest. You got to come to court. So, some fun legal, that's how it works. I wanted to share with the community here. How does someone get arrested? What's the authority of law enforcement to arrest someone? It's got to be in your presence, or a felony, or some of these exceptions. So 19.2-81, some really thrilling stuff. I mean, just wait for where we're going to go with the,
so I think people would ask, okay, well, what's a lot of people know this, but what's the difference between a felony and a misdemeanor,
Well, just briefly, let me tell you here. So felonies is a very serious crime. Misdemeanor is a less serious crime. And then traffic, for the public, traffic offenses is not considered a felony or a misdemeanor. Its own kind of small category. But the direct answer to that question, it's the legislature puts into law. This is a felony, this is a misdemeanor. So just in general, we'll think of things felonies like burglary, armed robbery, homicide, large crimes, stealing very valuable things over $1,000. Misdemeanor, smaller crime, stealing something that's less than $1,000. That shoplifting, simple assault, just kind of hitting someone, lower level crimes, drunk in public, that kind of thing. So,
and like a felony, you could go to prison. A misdemeanor, you're most likely going to stay in a jail per se. They could change a little bit, and the fines are a little bit different between a misdemeanor and a felony. Correct?
Yep. Misdemeanor, you max out at 1 year in jail. In most cases, there can be a little bit of a wiggle room there, and a felony is like you're saying, going to prison. The fines can be a lot higher. And you know what? That's a great topic we can jump into in another legal corner. I mean, the sky's the limit here.